Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are talking about some potential new information regarding Nintendo Switch 2. A leaker has come out and said some things regarding the graphical options of Nintendo Switch 2 that I find to be quite interesting. Now, the leaker in question is Nash Weedle, and every time I bring up Nash Weedle, I feel I need to say that, hey, I understand that Nash Weedle hasn't gotten everything right. If you go back a few years, there were things that they were off about. However, in more recent times, they have been fairly accurate. They're most known for their Metroid Dread leak a few years back, but even in this year they've gotten some things right, such as leaking Mario and Luigi Brothership, or even leaking Nintendo emulating Virtual Boy through the Nintendo Switch, which was confirmed to be happening by Shigeru Miyamoto at the Nintendo Museum. And then there have been other things that have yet to have been confirmed, like a Pikmin spin-off happening sometime next fiscal year, but we're keeping our eyes peeled on them, and there are others who have come out in support or in corroboration of Nash Weedle, such as Necrofelipe, the editor-in-chief of Universe and Nintendo. Not every time, but sometimes when Nash Weedle says something, Necrofelipe pitches in saying they've heard something similar. So the point is, I think Nash Weedle is absolutely worth having a discussion on. Does that mean what they're saying is going to become true? It remains to be seen. Take it with a grain of salt. But this is what Nash Weedle said most recently. Leak Express. Nintendo Switch 2 has a performance selector for portable mode from its own menu. In parentheticals, prioritize battery or power. This is what a developer has shared with some colleagues along with other details about the development kit. I wonder if we'll be getting other details a little bit later. It seems that Nintendo wants to avoid the multiple graphic options of the games and simplify it with a few options that we pre-configure on the console. So essentially what I believe Nash Weedle is getting at here is that when you go and play on your PlayStation or your Xbox, you usually have the option to switch between performance mode or fidelity mode. And sometimes you can turn off other features as well, like ray tracing for example. And Nash Weedle is saying, from what he's heard of some colleagues who have dev kits, that is not how it's going to work for Nintendo Switch 2. Instead of on a game-by-game basis being able to configure some different graphical settings or performance settings, on a system level, you simply choose how you prefer to experience things in portable mode. And so the implication here is that in docked mode, games are going to be running the same no matter what, maxed out to what Nintendo will allow. However, in portable mode, there can be some differences. Now, for those that may be unaware, what needs to be understood is that for Nintendo Switch and likely also Switch 2, the power of the Switch runs differently. It runs at a higher clock speed when docked and connected to an external power source. They don't have to worry about power consumption really, not as much. So when it's in portable mode, when there is no external power source, the clock speeds go down and power consumption, the battery, is better, it lasts longer, which is good for portable mode. And so it seems, based off what Nash Weedle is saying, that on Nintendo Switch 2, you are going to set it up beforehand, and if you want better power in portable mode but less battery life, then you can choose that. If you want to prioritize battery life, you can choose that. And I think this is an interesting option to have. But I do have some concerns. Because I look at, say for example, what Nintendo's implemented on Nintendo Switch with customizing your controls. First off, I don't find the setup to be quite elegant. It's a little weird and wonky. But also, it depends on the game I'm playing, what kind of controls I would want, and you can go back and switch it, but again, I just don't find it very elegant and seamless. And I can imagine similar issues with changing around the performance configuration of portable mode on Switch 2. There are going to be some games where I don't care about graphical fidelity, and there are going to be some games where I do. If I decide I want to play a new Xenoblade or Zelda game in portable mode, I still want the best visual experience. Especially if the Switch 2 screen does end up being a 1080p 8-inch screen. Like, that's going to be a sizable screen with a decent resolution. You're still going to be able to see quite a bit there. But then if I switch over from Zelda or Xenoblade quite quickly to something like Tetris, then when I'm playing something like Tetris, I'm going to want just more of a focus on better battery life because I mean, Tetris is Tetris. I don't really need much more of a visual experience with that one. And so having to switch those configurations depending on which game I'm jumping to might be kind of annoying. So I actually might prefer it to be on a game level as well. So I'm a bit concerned, but perhaps there's a way to do this while keeping it kind of seamless. So you know how when you jump into a Switch game, you can pick a profile, right? You might forget about it because you just jump into the same profile every time, but you do have to select, right? What if when you are picking a game, it works in the same way where you have your different profiles on your Switch or Switch 2, but there's also an option, it'll have some text on the screen where it says if you press B, you can switch to performance mode or what have you as you jump in. That will be a simple thing, and if I know that I'm going to be playing Tetris, I want better battery life, instead of pressing A to jump into the game, I press Y or whatever configuration they have to do that, and that way I can switch between the modes seamlessly as I'm jumping into the games, as opposed to going on a just overall wider system level, picking something across all games, and then needing to change it whenever I'm changing a different game that I would want to experience differently. Another simple solution, which by the way, this would also help the controller configuration options on Switch, is that when you go into these options to pre-configure what you would like, you can actually specify on a per game basis. Maybe I only want to go into performance mode when I'm playing Tetris, but if it's Zelda or Xenoblade, have it go on full power mode. And the same thing for button controls. If I want to switch A/B for a specific game, let me do that and just choose that specific game if it's already saved on my console. And before going forward here, let me just briefly ask that if you've gotten to this point and you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. But I guess I also find this interesting because it does mean that in docked mode, it's just going to be what it is. We're not going to have this tug of war or debate about what they're going to focus on. It's just going to be what it's going to be. And I can see how some people would not like that because people do like their options. We've seen even with Switch 1 that there are scenarios where people wish they had the option of choosing a performance mode versus a fidelity mode. But I think we should reserve most of our judgments until we see how exactly the Switch 2 works. Because we expect it to have DLSS and games are going to run and look a lot better when docked. So maybe there won't even be that much of a need between having to decide between a resolution or performance mode because of how the Switch 2 is going to function, unless we're talking about in portable mode. So we'll have to see on that. But before closing out here, I'm going to introduce a little bit of a bonus topic. And it is still somewhat tangentially related here, but it's more so on just this idea of leakers having a shaky history and then coming back and being more accurate. Just a couple days ago, I made a video on some things said by Samus Hunter. Samus Hunter is a leaker that we talked about a few years back, but then stopped because, as it turned out, they were pulling a lot of information from a lot of different places. At first it seemed fairly accurate, but then as time progressed, they were starting to get a lot of things wrong. It was starting to look very spotty, and so we stopped talking about them and they actually stopped posting. But this year, Samus Hunter has been totally spot on. They're not taking the same approach where they're leaking a whole bunch of things all day, every day. It's very few and far between, and when they say something, it's in a teasing-like form, and it's something that's pretty significant. They leaked Emio the Smiling Man, they leaked Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, and as we talked about this weekend, they put out 2 different teases. And what we ultimately concluded what those teases was one being something for the Donkey Kong Park expansion, which we just got news on with the Donkey Kong Direct, so they're now 3 of 3. And then the other tease they had was using an Ocarina of Time image that most of us took to mean a subtle tease towards Silksong, which later Samus Hunter on Twitter seems to suggest that that's what it is because most people have been guessing that. And they said that most people have gotten it right with the tease. So if we get Silksong announced within some time this winter, because that's what they said, so it doesn't necessarily have to happen immediately, and then all of a sudden Samus Hunter is 4 of 4. A lot of people don't want to trust this person, and I'm not saying you should trust this person, but the fact of the matter remains that so far this year they are 3 of 3, and I think they're about to be 4 of 4. That goes to show that they likely have legitimate information, they have good sources here. But once upon a time, they were shaky, so what changed? And this can also feed into the Nash Weedle situation, who also has gotten some things wrong in the past, but more recently has seemingly been more accurate. And I think the overall implication here is that when these people were leaking things in the past, they at the time likely also had sources then. But as time has progressed, they've gotten better at reporting or leaking this information, knowing when to fully buy into something and when not to. Maybe they had different sources, each of them, and they've decided on which sources they are trustworthy and which ones are not. And perhaps they're simply more careful about revealing this information now. As I said with Samus Hunter, they used to share a lot of different things, and now it's a lot less. And so with this in mind, I think it offers more perspective on other leakers as well. We look at people like Nate the Hate, or we look at people like Brazil, PH Brazil. These people have gotten things right in the past, and with some consistency, but there have also been times where they have been wrong. And what I've noticed looking at the different social circles that talk about different Nintendo leaks and things of that nature, it seems like some people just choose to believe who they want to believe in based off how they feel about them as a person, like if they like them or not. And then for others, when they don't like them, they just point towards the things they've gotten wrong and don't think about the things they've gotten right. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that I think there are a lot of leakers and insiders out there, and maybe if you want to track everything they've said, you can actually put together a percentage rate of how often they've been right versus wrong. But personally, how I just think we should handle it is pay attention, look at their track histories, and if they have a history of getting things accurate consistently, then it's worth paying attention to. But paying attention to does not mean wholeheartedly believing in what they are saying. Still take it with a grain of salt. Consider it yourself. Think critically. And consider the possibilities here, because there have been times leakers get it right, and there have been times leakers get it wrong. So those are my thoughts on the matter. But what do you think? What do you make of these different leakers now seeming to have a bit of a resurgence, being more accurate as of late? And what do you make of this information specifically from Nash Weedle about Switch 2 having different options for portable mode, but maybe not docked? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.